Are you ready? It's time for the Sudbury MMA Podcast.
How's it going, everybody? Looks like I'm flying solo today. Typically I like to usually have a guest or someone like that come in on the podcast and kind of, be able to chat with and, bounce some ideas off of. But in this particular case, I'm actually, it's probably been about a week, maybe a little bit over a week since we've released a podcast. And it's something I really want to become more and more consistent with. And I'm thinking, okay, I got to drive to Toronto. As most of you probably know, I'm in Toronto for work this week. So I'm like, I got some time to kill in the vehicle. So why not, make one of those priorities, getting the podcast done. So here I am. And you guys are going to have to bear with me and me alone for the next 20 minutes or so, guys. Now, what I'd like to talk about today is a lot of people, especially with this Ontario Open coming up, a lot of people have been asking me about what my thoughts are on competition, or, when should they start competing, or, is competition even something they should focus on, et cetera, et cetera. And my answer to that is, as a person that's, come up through the ranks and someone who's always competed, I truly don't see an issue with competing at some point, throughout your BJJ, lifetime. And I think it's actually good. I mean, that being said, you got to keep it into context. Like, sometimes I think when it comes to kids classes, I think, that it may be better to wait sometimes. And I'll explain that later on. But in the adult program, to be honest, there's people that compete with as little time in as, 30 days of training. Now, do I think that they're going to walk into the Ontario Open and, win the tournament? Absolutely not. Unless they're, coming with some heavy pedigree in wrestling or, maybe some other type of grappling martial art. Chances are, if you have 30 days of grappling, and even in the white belt division, you will not win that division unless you're like an absolute athletic freak, or you have some, several years of training in some other type of grappling. Because the white belt division, even though it's like, the white belt division and, technically the lowest ranking division, it's probably one of the divisions that's one of the most difficult to predict, what's going to happen, because you have people that are competing for the first time. You have seasoned vets that are competing in the white belt division. You have guys that are like, especially at this time of year, they're kind of making their way to the worlds, and this is their last hurrah at the white belt division. Excuse me. So, I mean, it's actually a very tough division to kind of predict what's going to happen. And especially, the guys that are like close to blue belt and, they kind of want to get that one final crack at trying to win a big tournament like the Ontario Open. It really is a tough division to predict. But that being said, it's also the only division where, you will get the opportunity to face somebody new as well. And so, I mean, if you have a couple of months in, there's probably a strong possibility that, especially in one of these bigger tournaments, you're going to face somebody who also only has a couple of months in, hopefully. And you'll be able to test your skill set against a comparable opponent. So I don't think it's a bad time to compete at any point after starting martial arts. I mean, the one thing that I think that's important to remember is that it's always okay to tap. Like, if you are stuck, it doesn't really matter what rank you are. Like, if you are stuck, make sure to tap. And especially at the higher ranks, because sometimes, your hesitation can be the difference. Your hesitation in tapping can be the difference between, a popped arm or not. So understand your limits and understand that if you're stuck, just tap. And if you kind of follow that basic guideline, like, there's no reason why you can't have a somewhat positive experience. Even if you come on the opposite end of the W, like, you'll still be able to have a good experience. Like, it's definitely a different feeling stepping onto the mats and competing in front of, hundreds of people, and of course a lot of them, your friends and family that have come up to watch, and your teammate that's watching and whatnot. So, just getting through that process is an admirable feat that I think people should try and work through. You got to remember, guys, a lot of people start martial arts for different reasons, whether it's to lose weight, meet people. Some people are trying to just develop a healthier lifestyle. And then some people, use it as a vehicle to kind of work through some personal issues like, you know, a little bit of anxiety, et cetera, and, you know, just stepping on the mats to compete and facing some of those fears, whether it is that, you know, that little bit of anxiety, whether it is, you know, a fear of losing or a fear of embarrassing yourself, whether it's a fear of competition, you know, like whatever your fear may be, just by stepping on the mats, you're automatically, you know, taking a step to conquer those fears, and that alone is a win despite the result of the match. So yeah, I think it's absolutely something that's good for people to do. And then on another note, you know, like especially as you start to become a little bit more proficient, and you know, you want to kind of challenge yourself at your rank, you know, I mean, it's always good to see where you stand. And you know, here's the reality: a lot of your training partners and people at the gym are going to know your game. And you know, let's say for example, a scissor sweep is an easy move for you, and you catch everybody at the gym with a scissor sweep, and then once the people kind of figure out your game, like almost all of a sudden it's like, holy geez, I can't seem to catch that scissor sweep on anybody anymore. Well, when you go to a tournament, the guys who don't know your game, you'll be surprised at how easily you can catch that sweep again. So I mean, there's definitely some pros to doing it, and those are some of them. So if you're thinking about doing it, you know, I know registration ends Monday night. Hopefully I'll get this podcast either uploaded tonight or tomorrow, and you'll kind of have the opportunity to register if you've been thinking about it. I highly recommend it. You know, of course, if you are not going to the Ontario Open, we have the Budo that's coming up in our hometown. And, you know, that tournament's usually obviously a little bit smaller and closer to home. So, you know, there's a little less nerves type thing. So I'd recommend you guys doing that one. For the kids, you know, I'll tell you why I hesitate with the kids sometimes. Especially at these bigger tournaments, you know, it's a little bit tough. You know, submissions become legal, you know, after a certain age. And if your children haven't had a chance to really learn how to defend against the submissions, you know, there's a distinct possibility that, you know, they can get hurt, you know, during the matches and stuff like that. So I mean, like, you know, if the kids are competing and they're 5, 6, 7, it's not too bad. You know what I mean? At the white belt and gray belt levels, there's no submissions. So I mean, like, that's the playing field is pretty even in a sense. They're kind of fighting for position. You know, you're trying to see who can, which athlete can get in the best position. But you know, as soon as you start hitting a little bit of a colored belt, or I believe it's after 11 when submissions become legal, despite, you know, the belt rank, you know, that's a little bit more of a tougher situation. If you get a child starting at 11 years old and they've only been doing it a couple of months, you got to remember that, you know, there's the possibility of facing a person even at gray belt that's been training for probably like 4 years, and they're probably a little bit more adept at the submission game. So, you know, I think for any parents considering putting their kids in, I'd prefer if they speak to me, and I'll give them an honest assessment and opinion as to, you know, if they should be having their children compete right now. Like I said, you know, there's no rush. We have literally, hopefully, the rest of our lives for them to compete. So I mean, it's much better to take our time and introduce them to the competition in a safe and you know, in a safe environment where they're going to have several rewards from competing, and not, you know, necessarily have a bad experience and not want to do it again type thing. So that being said, this weekend is the Ontario Open. I'm pretty excited. We do have quite a few people going down to compete. I know that the guys have been training pretty hard. Like they've, you know, now the nicer weather is around, I can see everybody starting up the running again. That's happening before classes. So I mean, if people are interested in jumping in on that, don't be shy to talk to like Justin and Pete. A lot of times those guys are kind of organizing it on social media. So I mean, if you're not sure what I'm referring to, you know, make sure to check out the social media pages or ask them what pages that they posted on, because often on, you know, Mondays, Wednesdays, they'll meet a little bit earlier than the class starts, and they'll head out for that run and do the stairs, those big sets of stairs and whatnot. And they're just doing, you know, like putting in those little extras in order to, you know, build up the cardio and hopefully get that competitive edge against their opponents. So that being said, yeah, no, there's a lot of people getting ready for tournaments. I know we have several competitors. When I look at the competitors list, it's very exciting at some of the potential matchups. There's a lot of, man, I tell you, like the tournament scenes have really taken, you know, a big spin here in Ontario. Like you know, I remember when there was very few purple belts, and you know, man, you'd register in the brown black division and there'd be like, you know, maybe 5 people on the list. And now, like, you look at these divisions and they're just slammed. And they're slammed at adult, they're slammed at masters, and they're slammed at seniors. So, I mean, it's something that, it's very, very exciting. There's a lot of great matches that are going to happen at the Ontario Open. So, if anyone's in the area and they're a jiu-jitsu fan, or if anyone's even in Sudbury and they want to come up to watch it, because, we're going to have a lot of guys competing on it, be sure to touch base with us and, find a way to get up there and share a room with someone and come on up. One thing that they're doing this year that I think is pretty cool is the no-gi absolute divisions. And basically what they've done is they've made two divisions, like a heavy and a light absolute division for no-gi, and it's like basically open rank, black belt rules. So, I mean, you got all kinds of people in these divisions, like, from white belt to black belt. I was taking a look at some of the names, and man, you got some tough guys in both, the light and the heavy divisions. So, I mean, you look at each division, I think both of them are well over 20 to 30 competitors. So, I mean, these are black belt matches, as in 10-minute rounds. I believe that there's going to be a lot of great matches, and the winners of each of those divisions are definitely going to be Ironmen, when it comes to how many matches they're probably going to have and the amount of mat time that they're going to put in on the weekend just in that division alone. Much less any of the other divisions that they're going to be competing in over throughout the weekend. So, these guys are true savages that are going to be basically putting it on the line. I know we got a couple of guys from our academy in each division, so I'm excited to watch them compete and play the no-gi game, and hopefully bring a few tricks to the mats for some of their competition. And of course, when I look at the team, we have quite a few people, representing Team Hensel Gracie in each of these divisions. So I'm super excited for the weekend. Super excited to see these guys compete. I almost hate the fact that I'm going to be away this week in Toronto for work, the week leading up to the tournament, but just in talking to some of the guys, a lot of them will be taking it easy this week. They'll probably put one more hard roll in this week on Monday. Sorry, I got a bit of a cough here, guys. Sorry. So a few of these guys will be putting in another hard session on Monday, and then maybe toning it down a little bit as the week goes on, to kind of rest up and get ready for the weekend. So that being said, guys, hope everybody has a great week. We look forward to the Ontario Open. My intention is we'll probably do another podcast on the way home and talk about all the results and stuff like that. So, of course, keep your eyes peeled on the social media sites. We're going to make sure to have a bunch of results and pictures and whatnot in real time online, so you guys will be able to keep up to that. But just tune in back next week on the podcast to hear the down low on how the matches went and all the excitement that happened. Aside from that, hope everybody has a great week, and I'll be thinking of you back here in Toronto, and man, I can't wait to see you guys come up on the weekend and do your thing, and then of course see you guys all next week at the club. Take care.